Hey, I'm John Dervage with Our Revolution Colorado Springs. With me today is Stephany Rose Spaulding, who is running for United States Senate in Colorado in 2020.
Yes. Hello.
Just tell me a little bit about your campaign and your background.
So I am running for U.S. Senate here in Colorado. I ran for the U.S. House in the last election cycle, and because of the momentum that we were able to build and garner from that race, there are individuals across the state, not in the district, who reached out to me and really encouraged me to run. Some of them actually pled for me to run, and so that in a lot of ways is why I am back in the arena and the public sphere working to earn the vote of Coloradans for 2020 as the U.S. Senator. And I come from education. I've been in the University of Colorado for 20 years, in education for 20 years, at the university for 9 of those years. I chair our Women's and Ethnic Studies program. I am tenured, so PhD from Purdue University. And I teach, again, courses on privilege and oppression and how to dismantle those systems.
Yeah, and that is definitely something I think that the current system desperately needs.
Absolutely.
Because there's obviously been a lot of power in a specific type of demographic and a specific type of individual for you could argue for since the beginning of United States history. So what is your platform then moving forward? Like, what are some of your proposals on how to dismantle that sort of oppression that we see?
So to your point, some would say, or at least right now in 2019, we are seeing from the New York Times and from other outlets and even organizations this conversation around 1619. So for those who are listening and don't know, 1619 was the year that the first slaves were brought to the shores of the United States in Virginia. And for others, and I would be one of them, and that is extremely pivotal, and we need to have those conversations because most people do not know this history and how it impacts the fabric and the structure of the United States in and of itself. But it's a lot earlier, and when we just stamp 1619 as a starting point, then we miss indigenous communities and indigenous populations that were wiped out because of colonialism and expansion and empire. So though I have a very specific connection to 1619 in my own personal life as an African American woman, I also, from a human perspective, recognize that it is much deeper than that. So to answer your question about my platform, it begins by centering human dignity and decency, right? So many of us who run for office or others, they come into the conversation and they're like, I want to tackle the environment, I want to tackle economics, I want to tackle this. For me, if we don't first center the dignity and the humanity of human beings, we can't get to the work of all of those other issues. So that is why my platform focuses on dignity and decency first. And from there, addressing issues of climate crisis, right?
Yeah.
Because, and it's not that other species on the planet are not impacted by the crises, but it is what we as human beings have done or not done that has created the crisis, right? Like dolphins didn't create the climate crisis. And so if we don't look at our role in that system and what has happened to impact the environment, then we will come up with solutions that are ineffective. So environmental crisis is one of the pillars of our platform. Addressing healthcare and Medicare for all is another pillar of our platform, because again, if people are not healthy, well, and whole, then you don't honor their humanity.
Yeah.
Additionally, immigration is another pillar of that platform, and immigration reform, making sure that we are seeing and honoring the humanity of people who are coming to our borders, and why they're coming, because all of these items are intersectional. And I don't want to give like a lecture from class, but I will just like put a footnote out there for the work of a lot of people who are doing this justice work that talk about a bird cage, right? And many of these issues are one wire on the system that creates the bird cage and keeps people oppressed. So I'll stop there because I talked a lot.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of. I think it's good. That's a good like foundation for where I think a lot of future discussions are going to go. So I think the first item that you brought up, and I saw your performance at the Climate Forum. I saw that you were at the Climate Forum. We had a Climate Forum in Colorado Springs about a week or so ago. It was really, it was an extremely good forum, and I think you did really good. And I think something that you brought to the table that I guess I never really considered was the social justice aspect of climate change, because there is, clearly a disproportionate effect on minority communities that climate change affects, and not just in America, but you think about like islands and
Yes.
places that potentially could not exist in 20 to 30 years if
Shorter than that.
yeah.
Yes.
I mean, like that is there's a huge social justice aspect to climate change.
Yes.
So can you explain a little bit about what you plan to do to address climate change, like what your proposals kind of are?
Absolutely. So I am an advocate of a number of the policies that have been put forth by individuals like Jay Inslee and Bernie Sanders, as well as Elizabeth Warren. There is amazing expertise from all of their platforms. I agree with Inslee that we have to move this date from 2050 to 2030, in terms of being renewable and 100% renewable by 2030, because the science is telling us otherwise, that we are really at a point where, and even more so, because I'm a researcher. I may not be an expert in that area, but when I want to know and dive deeper, I am a researcher. And we think about this 2 degrees Celsius shift.
Yeah.
The reality is there are so many places that have already experienced this shift, right?
Yeah, that's on average, right?
And so that is an average, and the way the planet operates is not like it's just all going to be 2 degrees at one point.
Yeah.
So for moving towards 100% renewables by 2030, making sure that we are building the infrastructure in the United States to have a national grid for electricity to be powered by solar and wind at stable rates, right? That and not like rates in terms of money, but that intermittency impacts the way that electricity is delivered.
Yes.
So as Bernie talks about creating from the Green New Deal job infrastructure, because we need people to be at work putting forth the technology that will allow communities to survive and thrive on renewable energies. And right now we don't have that. So the jobs package from the Green New Deal is exponentially important, as well as the transition that is socially just.
Yeah.
When we look at Coloradans and we can say, yes, we want to move Colorado forward, there are so many communities that have built their livelihoods on fossil industry, and it is not just to sit and turn around and just blame them and leave them behind, right?
Sure.
So making sure that those transitions are just when we move forward, that we are investing in communities that have been impacted the most, which is why I also connect Medicare for All to a Green New Deal, because you have marginalized communities that have been impacted by fossil and environmental racism that are experiencing the health outcomes and the crises of health from what we have not done environmentally. And so we can't say we're going to move them forward when they are plagued by asthma, or they are living with lead poisoning, their water is horrid and non-drinkable. So again, for me, these are the issues that I would attack and address as senator for Colorado.
Yeah, I mean, like the Green New Deal, I think Bernie's platform stands 20 million new jobs, and that's specifically, those are good paying, renewable jobs that all of those don't necessarily mean that the people who worked in the fossil fuel industry will just be, thrown to the curb. Like
Correct.
a lot of those jobs will also apply to those individuals as well. And in fact, they'll probably, on average, they pay more and probably won't have as many adverse health effects.
Right.
So yeah, there's a lot of benefits there. And you mentioned the more marginalized communities have been negatively impacted by climate change the most. I think of areas like that, rural areas that have droughts almost every day now during the summers that can't even really raise their crops. And Colorado is large. There's a lot of rural space. How have you reached out to those individuals and tried to kind of talk about climate change and how that can affect their lives in the rural communities in Colorado?
So I think as every Senate candidate should, we've driven across the state and had intimate conversations with individuals in these communities in rural space. Some of them are farmers, some of them are ranchers, others are, again, coming out of mining or extracting space. And if you are out in Durango or Mancos or Ridgeway, these are very serious concerns. One of the major concerns for Colorado as a state is the way in which we negotiate water. And right now, water for Colorado, of course, is an interstate compact. And so there are other states downstream that rely on water sources from Colorado. And when some of the water laws that we have are the most convoluted laws that the average person, and I would even say legislature, doesn't even know how intricate that the law itself works. So, for instance, one thing that I found really just mind-blowing is that we have a responsibility of sending water downstream.
Yeah.
Even if they don't use it, we have to give it. Even if the water is not produced, we have to give it, right?
The quota,
so
how much?
yes, so if there is a drought, we still we are obligated to meeting what New Mexico, California, or whatever needs, right? Mm-hmm. And we can look at Pikes Peak right now. We have just barely snow on top of the mountains. So one thing in bringing farmers and ranchers into the conversation is how do we bring their voices, their innovation into addressing our climate crises. The work that they do with, so California has a Healthy Soil project, and they just released their first grants to about 50 farmers who are engaged in this program, and they are asking for farmers who are doing the innovative work of diversity in their crops, sequestering carbon, by also, if you're a rancher, also planting trees and along your ranchway, so that the way in which the soil itself, bringing in natural plants back to the soil, so that we can sequester that carbon that is released, and we can farm in better ways that help fight climate crisis. So yeah, I've been building relationship with people throughout Salida and the Four Corners, and just really listening, because the reality is, if we come in as the expert, then we have already alienated so many people. And the last thing that I will point to on that topic is, I was at a forum a few days ago, and as retired retiree union guy who was like, the only way we can pay for this is if you raise my taxes. And I, just trying to negate that negative idea. And it is not the only way that we can address climate crises. One of the biggest issues that we have is $20 billion that subsidize fossil energy right now. So there are ways that we can spend money differently that we already have access to.
For sure. Yeah, I mean, like if you just take care of the subsidizing, get rid of the subsidizing that we do for the fossil fuel industry over 10 years, that raises like $3 trillion. And so there is ways to pay for it that aren't going to affect the taxpayer. Actually, I believe almost every, if not every, I'd say comprehensive climate change proposal does not raise people's taxes. It's all coming through corporations and through maybe if you're Jeff Bezos, you might have to pay a little bit more. But
I don't mind that.
Yeah, I don't mind that either. So yeah, and the other aspect that you brought up too, that I think a lot of people don't necessarily make that parallel connection between, that how climate affects their health, and how, we have here in Colorado Springs, we have a coal burning power plant just in downtown. I don't even want to think about how that's going to affect my lungs in the future. So there are like, health benefits of having cleaner energy sources as well.
Yes.
But also going a little bit further than that to talk about Medicare for all, there are people who do suffer from, black lung and things or experiences that they've had working in coal mines. How do you convince people who work in like those industries that a program like Medicare for All is actually, beneficial for them?
So for me, it's a matter of is what you have access to right now, is it working for you? Mm-hmm. And the vast majority of people, it is not working for them. Whether it is having to make a decision on paying mortgage or rent versus the prescription drugs that you might need. I have a mother in Douglas County who her son's asthma medication costs $300 a month. And they are on, I say everybody's on fixed income. If you have a salary, that's what a fixed income is. So most people are on standardized incomes, and making that decision, what you have is already ineffective. And again, I know that the talking points try to disparage the plans for Medicare for All, saying like it's gonna increase this, and the third. One, you're already paying for it. Mm-hmm. You are already paying for it, and you don't have sufficient health care, right? Yeah. So if we are simply asking to reframe the way you pay for it, and you get more than what you have already, it works better for you. You get to be alive to see your children get married and have children of their own. Right now, we are trying to do everything, at least I am, and a lot of other progressives that I know, we're trying to do everything possible to take care of as many people as possible, as opposed to the current model that is, if you can get in here, then we'll take care of you. Yeah. And then what care we provide is insufficient anyway.
Yeah, I feel like everyone has a story. Like everyone, at least one story. Most people have several, of where the way the current system works, they didn't want to call an ambulance because had an emergency, or they left the hospital and had tens of thousands of dollars in debt and had to basically take out a second mortgage on their home to pay for their medical debt. I mean, that's not sustainable, right?
My father is retired Chicago public school teacher, and so is my mother. And in their retirement, and my father is having some health challenges or whatever, in their retirement, the health care that they have access to literally limits the number of times that you can call an ambulance. So my parents are having a conversation about, you can't fall down.
Yeah.
You can't fall down because I can't pick you up and I can't call an ambulance.
Yeah, I have to like foresee the future to make sure that you're not going to have an accident.
Absolutely.
Because there's a quote on how many ambulance calls. Like, that's ridiculous.
It is ridiculous.
Yeah, and I just think too, like, no other country, modern country in the world has to deal with that.
Right. Right.
We're the only one. We pay twice as more for our medical treatment than any other country. I mean, that's ridiculous.
Yes,
So,
I agree.
Yeah, and I think that the other aspect too that people don't necessarily always, there's always the talking points about, like you said, raising the taxes. Like, I'm going to have to pay more for this. On average, I mean, the average person or average family would save $3,000.
Yes.
So, the other thing that comes up when we talk about Medicare for all is just the differentiation between what that actually means. Because there's a lot of proposals out there. People say in debates and in media that they're for Medicare for all, yet it isn't single payer, or it doesn't cover mental health, or it doesn't cover dental and eye care. What's is your formal definition of Medicare for all single payer? Or
it is. It's single payer, and it's comprehensive of all of the care that will allow a person to be well. And let me I don't really talk about a lot of this on camera, nonetheless.
We could try to crop it.
It's okay. I grew up, I was born with a birth defect that only allowed me 1.5 sets of teeth. Mm-hmm. So I had a full set of primary teeth and not a full set of adult teeth. And so when my primary teeth started to fall out, as they would, nothing was there to replace them. Mm-hmm. This was genetic. It just and I got bad eyes and bad teeth, right? And my mom took me to the dentist. It wasn't anything. It wasn't like I was eating too much sugar or anything like that. I probably was still eating too much sugar, but it wasn't behavior.
Don't we all?
It was medical.
Yeah.
And imagine being like preteen and a teenager with 1.5 sets of teeth, like a jacked up mouth.
Yeah.
Kids are relentless. But going to the dentist and wanting to get orthodontics done, wanting to get work on my mouth done, it was labeled as cosmetic.
Yep.
And so it was not covered by our health insurance. So it was not until I was a graduate student and then a professor that I was able to actually address the issues of my mouth, because they were not seen as a medical problem. Now they'll tell you, every dentist will tell you that if your mouth is not healthy, then the rest of your body is not healthy.
Yeah.
But insurance-wise, it was cosmetic.
Yeah.
And so when I think about my own experience and issues with healthcare, so literally I have a Honda in my mouth because I pay $20,000.
Yeah.
But when I think about that and what other families are facing, mm-hmm. everything from vision to dental, mental health, and mental health not in the sense that you are experiencing a crisis. Mental health in the sense that if you have to go regularly to get an annual checkup, everybody we need to change the stigma around mental health.
For sure.
Reproductive health, everything is covered.
Yeah. All right, we're going to take a quick break. We'll be back in a little bit. Continue talking to Stephany Rose Spaulding, who's running for U.S. Senate. Hey, this is John. Just a quick reminder, Our Revolution Colorado Springs is volunteer donation based. So if you like our videos or want to find out more about Our Revolution Colorado Springs, get more involved, you can go to our website at ourrevolutioncs.com or find us on Facebook, find us on Meetup, basically every social media platform. We hopefully have some group, so feel free to join us. We have meetings as well planned for the next few months. Debate watch parties, canvassing events for Bernie Sanders. Eventually we're going to be going door to door for candidates in the area that we feel share Our Revolution's message. So, find us on Facebook and just keep active on that, and you can see what events we have coming up. We also have a newsletter that we're starting to send out monthly. Again, lists all the major developments, as well as some highlights from local news stories, campaign news stories from the Democratic primary, and so on. So if you want to get subscribed to that, you can find the link in our Facebook or on our website, and get you signed up there. So I think that's it. Without further ado, here's the second half of our interview with Stephany Rose Spaulding, who's running for United States Senate in Colorado in 2020. So I think the third thing you mentioned in your introduction was immigration. And I seem to remember, I thought you actually posted some pictures on social media how you actually went down to the border. Can you tell us a little bit about that experience and what you kind of learned?
So I've been to the border a couple times now, and I have plans to definitely go back. And the first time I went, I was moved on Independence Day. And so for normal campaign processes or whatever, major holidays like that are like golden tickets for candidates, because you get people who are out about in the streets and you get to shake a lot of hands and kiss babies. That's what my dad calls it. So there are parades, and we had scheduled to go to like 3 different parades throughout southern Colorado, and it was like July 3rd, and something in my spirit was just like, this is honestly, and I know my mom will eventually watch this is some bullshit, right? That we as a nation are celebrating this idea about independence and freedom and liberty and all the things, right? And to wake up and just do business as usual, like, it was eating away at my spirit. And I don't know about anybody else, but it was eating away at my spirit. Again, I am a black woman in the United States, so these words and the pursuit of these ideas means something for me, very specific. So I couldn't do it. I told my political director, and at the time my field director, that I wasn't feeling, like just going to some parades and shooting some fireworks and eating a hamburger. I don't eat hamburgers anyway, but still. So I woke up that morning. It was 6 o'clock in the morning, and I drove to El Paso, Texas. So from El Paso County to El Paso, Texas. And for me, I wanted to see with my own eyes. I wanted my feet to be on the soil. I wanted to know what this Rio Grande looks like at that space. So in my spirit, it was absolutely the right thing to do. And then I've gone back since with organizations like Vote Common Good that are working with immigrants and advocating for humane and just treatment. Mm-hmm. The last time that I went, there was a congressional hearing. Congresswoman Veronica Escobar, who is the congresswoman of that district, was holding a congressional hearing, and there was testimony out of DC, and that's a rare thing to have a congressional hearing out of the Capitol and in district. But it was that serious for her colleagues to be able to see what is happening. So I was there for that, and the testimony from individuals from like the ACLU and organizations that have been working with families on the ground, it was appalling. It was appalling. Like, the policies that this administration has put in place, remain in Mexico, or the carte blanche, space that Border Patrol and Customs have, right? We met with families, husband and wife, who are migrant laborers and have not been able to see their family in 14 years. Those are the things that were heartbreaking. But what was most surprising was that these congressmen and women didn't know what was going on. And so even from their questions, they were exasperated. Like, they were like, who set things up this way? And so you have these expert individuals on the ground saying, well, like, you all approved the budget, and it's coming down from DC. And these weren't like freshmen congressmen and women. They were senior individuals that had no idea of what was happening on the ground. And so for me, as a candidate running for U.S. Senate, that's harrowing, because again, you all continue to sign budgets and send money this way. But these people from the ACLU are telling you, we can't even go into speak to migrants, right? We can't even go to court with them. We're being told that we can't even advocate with them. And that's not how it's supposed to work. So it was already heartbreaking, but from a legislative perspective, it was scary and angering. And there are more people who are currently in Congress who need to bring their behinds to the border. Yeah,
because I think that's something you see every once in a while, like they arrange a trip and it gets some media publicity. I'd argue probably not enough. But to a certain point, I always ask myself, like, is cruelty the point? Is that really what they're trying to show here? Are they trying to make a point to be cruel on purpose, to try to detract people from coming over, or are they just racist? Probably, most likely, based off of what we've seen from Facebook groups that ICE Patrol border agents have been a part of. But do you believe cruelty is the point?
I think it's a combination of both, right? Absolutely. This administration is racist. But it's not just this administration. Racism is part of the fabric of who we are as Americans. Yes, immigrants, particularly from Southern and Central America, have been used to serve a purpose for U.S. economic development. And that is built in racism, racist capitalism. So yes, it is. This practice right now, I think, is definitely about cruelty, but cruelty to be a distraction from other things that this administration is also doing. This man is a mastermind of how to control media narrative. And so when there are things that he really doesn't want the American public to be paying attention to, like the hundreds of judges that have been installed in benches across this country in federal courts, then they become a pawn and a target to distract our attention. And I want to say it hasn't started. It hasn't started with this man in office, and we would we'd be lying to ourselves to think that he is the cause and orchestrator of all of these policies. And I know some people will say and they will defend, but America has not been great on immigration for a long time. And we need people in office who will recognize that and who will reconcile with that.
Yeah, because you hear a lot about how, if we remove Trump, that solves a lot of problems. Like, and obviously, like, he is I think a very, very clear sign of what the Republican Party has become. But I'd also could argue what they were under the surface for the last, at least 20 decades. How do we hold the whole party? Or should we hold the whole party accountable? As well as, I shouldn't just say Republicans. I mean, there's been some centrist Democrats who've had horrible, horrible immigration policies as well. Should we just...
I would hold America accountable. I would hold us all accountable. For those of us that may not be the ones writing legislation, but we are complicit in wanting the things that we want, right? And I came to this realization and starting my own work to do differently from my space of privilege, teaching, social justice at university. And one year we had students where environmental and food justice was like coming up a lot. And I am originally from Chicago. So I went home. That's where my family is. I went home for a holiday in December. Both my birthdays, my birthday and my father's birthday is in December. And then, of course, we celebrate Christmas. And I was angry at my brother because he makes like really good cheesecake. But he was trying not to make cheesecake. And I like it with strawberries, right? So I'm running around. I finally convinced him to make cheesecake for our gathering, but I'm running around trying to find strawberries. And I'm in the store and I'm grocery shopping and I'm mad at the store. I'm like, why are these strawberries like $4.50 doggone cent for a pound? Not even a pound, like a half a pound or something like that. I was mad. And then like something in the spirit, and I am a very spirit-filled person, was like, because it's December and it's Chicago. Strawberries don't grow in December in Chicago.
Hope not.
And so you are paying for the fact that you want strawberries in December in Chicago. Yeah. So I tell that story because I don't let my students get away with not figuring out the spaces where they are privileged, right?
Yeah.
Where it's easy for us to connect with our oppressions, but not wanting to identify our privilege. The way in which agribusiness and agri-economy works in the United States is part and parcel to a lot of the economic injustice happening in countries where people are forced to migrate.
Yeah.
The fact that we want lettuce for 49 cents a head is part and parcel why immigrant communities are marginalized and minoritized through agri-labor.
Yeah.
So I hold us all accountable. Yes, there's some asinine stuff that this administration and the GOP is allowing, and that level of we have to immediately address this, like separating children from their families. That's some evil.
Yeah.
But we can't just, like, once we get that squared away, be like, okay, our hands are clean.
Yeah, I mean, I think people understanding what their background is, where their privilege lies, is extremely important. And also just having empathy. I mean, being able to, you don't have to, you don't have to be able to like physically put yourself in a person's shoes. Like, I don't think you can actually do that. But at least trying to ask questions, understand, and like empathize about their situation. I mean, there's, and that kind of makes me think of the next point. It's like homelessness, right?
Yep.
Because a lot of people put stigmas on people who are homeless to say, no, you put yourself in that situation. You didn't pull yourself up by the proper bootstraps, or you're a druggie or something. Like,
yeah, I hate that statement.
Yeah, I know. But I mean, we see a lot of homelessness here in Colorado Springs. Like it's in Denver and really across the the mountain region. I mean, you see a lot of homelessness in general. So, how do we address that issue moving forward?
So again, as I've shared with a lot of this conversation, is intersectional, and so our approach has to be multi-pronged, right? Yes, we need to build and offer affordable housing, but we also have to recognize that most of what happens in homelessness is systemically rooted in the way in which poverty is created. And poverty is prolonged and generationally impacted because of education and lack thereof, and disparities in education and wealth building, and lack of and education, wealth building, and disparity is rooted in racism. So it's all systemically working in conjunction with each other. So we have to address education equity, because education equity is one of the proven factors that brings and helps people to get out of poverty.
Yeah.
We also have to create and provide job opportunities that celebrate who people are. Mm-hmm. Just getting a degree from a university is not going to guarantee people work.
For sure.
And is not going to guarantee people livable and sustainable wages. So our economy, our work economy, has to focus on working families and working labor. And also, going back to the education piece, not only selling the narrative that a bachelor's degree is salvation for high school students.
Yeah.
Unless we're making that education free, as well as tracking, right? We should be graduating students who could go into the workforce if they choose, in trade or entrepreneurship if they choose. Having a 4-year degree is not the path for everyone. And I say that as an educator who wants, go get a PhD. I'm waiting for you to say, I'm going to grad school. I'm going to go get a PhD, right? I want as many people to have the opportunity if that is what is going to benefit their lives. Mm-hmm. But we have young girls coming out of school who have spent their lives, like I said, I grew up on the south side of Chicago, have spent their lives doing hair. Their entire career through high school, they were doing hair. Why don't they have cosmetology licenses when they graduate, right? Mm-hmm. So that they themselves can start their own business, or at least are licensed to work if they choose to put themselves through school. I would prefer that we make college free and that we are investing in programs around education that looks at the dearth of laborers in industries, so that those individuals, if they are learning in this community, are being trained to respond to the job opportunities that will be in a community. So I think all of those things work hand in hand. Yes, we need affordable housing, we need equity in education, and then we need job opportunities.
Would you be for elimination of all student debt?
I am a tenured professor, and I've been tenured for a while now, and I'm still paying back student loans. Yeah. I'm down for the elimination of debt.
Because I think that's one of those bottlenecks a lot of students face. You can't necessarily buy a house or start to even think about getting married or have kids when you have $100,000 student debt.
Absolutely.
So.
Yep.
All right. What? Wrap it up? Oh, we'll cut it. Cool. Well, I want to thank you for your time. I think it was a really good conversation. I really appreciate the personal stories that you bring, and I think just judging by your performance on the climate forum, I'm really excited to see you in this race and hope you the best.
Thank you.
So
it's been a pleasure.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.